Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Cellino. I am a librarian and an associate professor at Joliet Junior College. I'd like to welcome you all today for the final hike, JJC's Natural Areas 1993-23 with Professor Andrew Neill. We're going to work this where I'm going to give an introduction. Professor Neill will give his presentation, and then at the end we'll have a question and answer portion where you will type your questions into the chat and I will moderate. So to get going, Professor Andrew Neill was born and raised in Illinois, and he has always felt a kinship with nature. He attended Arlington High School, William Rainey Harper College, Northern Illinois University, and Illinois State University. Professor Neill spent a few years working in cell biology laboratories in Chicago before returning to graduate school. He has been teaching since 1990. He started his teaching career at Lincoln College and has been at Joliet Junior College since 1993. He helped raise 3 children, now ages 24, 21, and 21, who have all attended Joliet Junior College. Professor Neill is a firm believer in evolution, the geologic record, and the rational power of. He volunteers with various land conservation organizations such as Midwin National Tallgrass Prairie and the Illinois Native Plant Society. Help me in welcoming Professor Andy Neill.
I can hear the applause at home. Thank you. You can all go ahead and sit down now. I want to thank Amy Cellino for inviting me. It seemed like it was kind of spontaneous in that I know she was looking for some speakers. She and the library crew had other speakers in the past, and I'm pretty certain this opportunity kind of takes the place of or is the next step in what JJC used to offer on I think a monthly basis was the brown bag seminars. That's when I got my first start giving talks at JJC back in 1993. So you can see this picture, hopefully, part of our Joliet Junior College's natural areas. And it's one of the locations on campus that I just think is really aesthetically pleasing. It really catches the eye. It's an image reminiscent of an ancient oak grove leading out into open prairie and the big sky beyond. If you're familiar with the campus, this is at trail marker 15, where this trail goes off west towards the bike path. And then behind where the picture is being taken, it would take you over the footbridge and back across the road back to campus. A couple of students said, well, where's the hike going to be? And I said, well, there is no hike. It's a virtual remote presentation. And I said, it would have been a hike, but it's metaphorically a hike through the many decades of time that I spent at JJC working on things. So it's going to be a talk that's, I think, going to be rather extemporaneous and a stream of consciousness. As I see an image and slide, I'll just relate some stories. They may kind of go back and forth a little bit. So I hope as the presentation goes, it'll kind of trigger some thoughts and questions from the participants that we'll get to during the chats. So I'm going to be the host and trail guide along the way. I do have a outdoor live tour planned of the natural areas and Fen in April during Earth Month. So if you happen to be on campus in the month of April, you could join us for a hike. So a couple of quotes that got me thinking about this talk. This one was rather recent, January 2020. by Rachel Bale. She wrote, "But conserving our natural and cultural heritage, like efforts to cure disease and stop war, is about nurturing good in the world. We need wildlife and ancient artifacts, just as we need health and peace. They're the backdrop against which our lives take place, and they help us make sense of our own stories. They provide the context for our existence. They're our past, present, and future." And a little before that was Aldo Leopold's. Many of his quotes are inspirational and rather famous. I grew up reading Aldo Leopold's works, most famously a Sand County Almanac, published in 1949. And one of his quotes that continues to resonate with me, something I'm often reminded of why I do what I do and the work that we do, when he wrote, "A thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, the stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise." And Leopold, in this writing or this passage, writes very broadly. A lot of things can apply. He also allows us a little bit of wiggle room when he says that it tends otherwise. And as I've done a lot of work in restoration and conservation and teaching, I'm often, challenging my students to think about how we treat the land and our relationship to it, and being guided by some kind of principle, a land ethic that Leopold wrote quite a bit about. Well, this is an aerial view of JJC. And in fact, I can't see the top of the slide. I just realized it's being blocked by the bar, which it's probably should be at the bottom. So I can't read what it says at the top of the slide.
Oh, I can tell you.
Yeah, what does it say?
Tell you, Andy, I was going to say, it says, "When I was just 5 years old, JJC main campus, circa 1968.
Oh, yeah.
Which is very cool.
Yeah. So, if you're familiar with the campus, then this flyover, so we're looking west, probably, Hobolt Road, just over Hobolt Road, and you can make out the campus lake off to the right there. And all of those buildings being constructed were called the temporary buildings until the actual campus could be built around the campus lake there. And those temporary buildings remained for many decades. They were the longest lasting temporary buildings I think any of us ever saw. But this was the start of what would become the main campus at 1215 Hobolt Road. If you know some of your history, Joliet Junior College was founded in 1901 at the Joliet Township High School Central Campus in downtown Joliet. And they eventually outgrew that space and wanted their own. And so they came here to the Richardson's farm. And it's my understanding that the Richardson family sold this bit of property, about 400 acres or so, for $10, kind of more of a donation than anything else. This is a picture of various dignitaries. The one person that I do know really well is Dr. Zales with the handlebar mustache and the cowboy hat on. And to his right, I believe that's Jerry Zeborowski, who at the time, and well, right up until he retired, was the police chief. Others that might be watching, you may know who those other dignitaries are, but I do not. But Dr. Zales, I consider one of the founding grandfathers of the campus. He was larger than life. He still is. He's still alive and well, living in western Iowa, actually northwestern Iowa in the Loess Hills. But he was responsible for establishing the campus natural areas, the Arboretum. He was passionate, still passionate about conservation, landscape, biology. And under his tutelage, I came to know my profession or my position here at JJC. So this was the original job description that I applied for back in, well, effective date was there January 4th, 1993. So I remember applying in 1992. And along with all the obvious things that would come with a description for an instructor of biology, two things caught my eye, and that was to share the responsibility for the management of the college outdoor natural areas that include forest, prairie, and lake systems. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that. What an amazing opportunity. And also to communicate the role and importance and impact of biology and science to our community. Now on this slide, I write, the unicorn finds his rainbow job. And well, I'm the unicorn. And the reason I say that about myself is because at the time, Zales and whoever else was running the department, in 1992, was looking to replace some of the senior faculty that were retiring en masse. And Zales hired, I think, 4 or 5, I think I was the 5th of 5 new hires. And Zales really wanted somebody to come in here and start to take ownership and stewardship of the natural areas. And the others, probably tied down with a lot of the other responsibilities, wasn't doing the job as enthusiastically as Zales wanted to. I came to it very much enthusiastically wanting to do the job. And so after, I suppose, 5 attempts, Zales found his guy. And excuse me, I've been at it ever since. And that's not to say that the other colleagues failed in any way. But like I said, there's a lot of work to be done just being a full-time college teacher here in the department, and you can keep yourself plenty busy, stuck in the classroom. And Zales was always telling me, you got to get outdoors. You got to take your students outdoors, take them out for a hike and get out there and do it. And I agreed with him, but I also had to balance, being a starting instructor at the college as well, developing my courses. But he definitely inspired and prodded me to work hard. And so I did. Then, and with that, September 2nd, 1993, I gave my very first brown bag lecture about the oak savanna restoration. That was part of the project that I first got started with. And at that time, Fred Harris was leading the brown bag lecture committee, and we would pitch ideas for a new semester, and eventually your talks would get approved, and then you'd be on the lineup for the semester. And there was either 1 or 2 every month of the semester. And it was there that I basically kind of laid out a plan for continuing the work that Zales had started here on campus, restoring natural areas. And I do remember, I wish I remembered better the first time Dr. Zales took me on a hike in the natural areas. It was probably uneventful. He has a long stride, and so you have to really hustle to stay up with him as he's hiking down the trail. And he's got plenty to share, many stories and facts and figures about the natural areas, plant life of Illinois, bird life. Zales is definitely a Renaissance guy, an outdoorsman, very much cut from the same cloth of Aldo Leopold. And it just seemed, like I said, a very comfortable fit coming into the department. That's not to say that I didn't have my difficulties and my challenges. And it's been a long 30 years too. It hasn't been without its stressors. And I had moments where I was nearly brought to tears because I was so stressed out, trying to do a good job, trying to please everybody, which we know can't happen. So over those decades, I also, learned some valuable personal skills as well. But if there's one place on campus that is the most precious and rare of all, it's got to be our calcareous fen at the north end of campus, and a little bit of remnant tallgrass prairie as well. The fen isn't very large, maybe a couple acres at most, but it's a rare wetland type. They're already kind of rare, naturally occurring on unique geologic formations where the groundwater seeps to the surface, percolating through dolomite limestone. And as the water dissolves that mineral rock, the waters become slightly alkaline or above a pH of 7. So a fen is kind of the opposite of an acidic bog in that way. And the soil type develops a pretty thick peat, partially decomposed plant material, and a unique set of plants and animals come to live there. And I write, it may not be the biggest, and it certainly isn't. There are other fens that are of larger and better quality, like at Elgin's Bluff Spring Fen, and those down at the Medewin, and others in Will County. And it's certainly not the best. I had one of the biologists with the Nature's Preserve Commission come out, Kim Roman, and I asked her to give it a grade. And she said, well, at best, it's probably a C. And I said, well, yeah, unfortunately, we don't have any, threatened and endangered species. That probably would have elevated it, but it's still a fen, and it still counts, and it's ours. Zales has always said that you can build a brand new shiny building anywhere, but you can't recreate the conditions of this fen. It is one of a kind. And if it's lost, it is gone forever. And Zales fought very hard to maintain the perimeter, the boundaries of the fen. He convinced me to call it the Outdoor Teaching and Learning Laboratory, to remind administrators and board members that are sometimes often eager to put up bright, shiny new things so they can put their names on it, that they need to avoid coming out into the outdoor laboratory. No different than any laboratory in a building. Students and the community have continued to learn about conservation and restoration management of natural areas. They've learned about the natural history of the vanishing landscape of Illinois, the Midwest, and quite frankly, around the world. So as we lose more and more acreage to all sorts of development, these natural areas are even more rare and precious, and serve as a fitting example of what wild nature looks like. So we have some working model to refer to. Excuse me. So Illinois, known as the Prairie State, was once 22 million acres of tallgrass prairie. The other portion was various forest types. Now that 22 million acres of tallgrass prairie has been reduced to no more than 2,500 acres of prairie, and most of that is scattered throughout the state. Remember this map. We're going to kind of come back to this landscape. Will County, this is Will County's boundary, and the map produced by the Forest Preserve District of Will County. And if it's not kind of that olive green or shades of, I guess I can use the pointer here, shades of whatever that color is. But all this light gray is basically agricultural lands or built up lands, developed lands. And so as far as Will County is concerned, those dark olive green patches are Will County properties. Everything in between has been developed. So there's very little left in Will County, and for that matter, the state of Illinois. I just want to point out this large chunk down here, south down 53 or Route 59. This is the Medewan National Tallgrass Prairie and the Des Plaines Conservation Area. And this is a really important open space where the U.S. Forest Service has been actively restoring tallgrass prairie since 1996. But this area that's circled in red is effectively the Lower Rock Run Creek JJC watershed. So JJC is located right in that general area right here in the center. So a little bit closer look, I circled the campus of JJC, the adjoining Forest Preserve District property to the north, Colvin Grove. The Rock Run Creek comes down, is on our western border, and enters the Illinois-Michigan Canal. Of course, I'm getting a coughing fit. I've been fine all day, except for now. So these are the youngsters, the Neill prodigy, Justine in the middle, Colin on the left, Kendra on the right. And you could be sure I took them out as much as I could to, teach them about nature. And this was one of our summer trips. We were catching butterflies. We were sampling in the wetland and the creek. This is just north of the campus. And I remember we were catching crayfish and, kids that age, they just have a ball. And so I really believe in this quote that in the end, we will conserve only what we love, and we only love what we understand, and we only understand what we're taught. And that has been my mission as a parent and a teacher. Of course, as a teacher, it really becomes a part of your entire being. And every moment, you're often teaching others. We all are teachers. We all can share the lessons that we've learned. And that's a really important thing to remember, that we're all part of this teaching each other about our values and whether or not we value the natural areas, the natural world, nature, among many other things. So before there was, Microsoft, before there was the copy paste, before there was clip art, I was literally doing the original cut and paste, finding pictures, Xeroxing pictures, cutting them, customizing them to a single page, and then printing up our fall ecological restoration project schedule. And it was pretty ambitious. We would have, I was basically doing this by myself and would be inviting others to join me, but at least once a month during the fall and then into the spring. And this would eventually be winnowed down to, currently, we only have 2 work days a year. We have one in April. And our work day for this April is April 3rd. And then we typically have one in October on a Sunday. And so we have our spring and we have our fall work day. And that works out really well, as just as well as this did. Again, I was young. I was more ambitious. It was before I had kids, trying to make a splash and preserve my, position in the department. This was the original site of the first restoration day and project that I helped begin. Again, Zales had been doing restoration work all along, but he had also been busy doing others. He was getting close to retirement, and he was looking for some help, for goodness sakes. This is a big piece of property and we need a lot of help. And this sign is still up I salvaged that wood from, the kids will know, Uncle Mike's old neighborhood. There was a neighbor tearing out their back deck, and I salvaged the wood, and I took it to Zales, and I said, maybe you can router a sign out of it, and he did. And that definition of ecological restoration came out of a new journal at the time, Restoration Ecology, and their mission. So I borrowed it from them, and it says, ecological restoration is the process of reestablishing the structure, function, and integrity of NATO ecosystems. And established in 1993. I cannot believe how infrequently anybody anywhere ever puts dates on things. T-shirts don't have dates. Students don't turn in their schoolwork with any dates on it. They don't even turn them in with their names on it. But, you know, it's a big ask to say, why don't you put a date on it so you can reference it? And if you need to go back and find your work, you know where, you know, in the sequence of dates, you can find it again. So ever since then, I've become more and more entrenched about putting dates on things so we have a reference in time. It's important for history. Okay, so 1993, years go by, things are happening. I've had a child now. This is Justine was born in 1997. And there's always been threats to the natural areas. Again, administrators and board of trustees have a different mission, and that is to revisit the master plan every 5 years or so and figure out where we need to add more parking lot, building, whatever, you know, to meet the growing needs of the college community that we serve, and we do. We've added satellite campuses. Of course, we've got the North Romeoville University campus, north on Weber Road. And that was just opening when I started. And they've expanded up there. And I mean, I get why they do that. It's just instinctive. But, you know, over my years, we've had to sometimes push back against that and say, yeah, that's fine. Just don't come within the boundaries of the outdoor learning laboratory. And by and large, the campus, the leaders have steered clear of it. But at the same time, I could see that the natural areas would require regular, constant promotion and to better institutionalize it here at the college. It is a fundamental part of our campus. It's part of our culture. It's part of our landscape. So with the help of Dr. Zales and department members, they helped me help us to craft this resolution. And it was the first one I'd ever crafted. I'd never heard of whereas statements and therefores, and it went through a number of revisions. But this was the one, and I can still remember it vividly, that I got to read at the board meeting, April 15th, 1998, and that's Justine's one-year-old birthday at the time. I had old school slides in a carousel, and for each whereas, I had a slide with some pictures that illustrated the facts that I was reading, and it just basically outlined the importance of the natural areas and its role that it plays to the college, to the community, to southeastern Illinois, to the Midwest. And we get to the last therefore on this date in recognition of, right? And it says resolve to grant continued protection. And it was there where I had put in permanent protection. And at the last minute, the president of the college, I think it was Tom Gamble at the time, caught it and pulled the word permanent out of the resolution. So we didn't sneak one by. And I really didn't want to sneak it by anyway. We wanted permanent protection. But the college always wants to keep its hands untied with the possibility of building out into those wasted spaces that are known as natural areas. well, if it's not us, who is going to do it? And if it's not now, then when is it going to get done? And I've been living in part that mantra for a very long time. And I tell my students that. Aspiring biology majors and even non-majors, okay, you're the next generation. It's not going to be you, then who's it going to be? And if it's not now, then when is it going to happen? By the time I retire next year in May, I will have had approximately 6,500 students that have come through my classroom, and I've had the honor and privilege to be a part of their academic goals. And it's one of the things that certainly keeps me young, on my toes. It keeps me hopeful. I mean, students, the young generation are our future, and a lot depends on that. I say this to them explicitly, regularly, passionately, and the looks on their faces remain exactly the same, unchanging. And I don't know if it's probably just that age group, but it's really hard to know what they're thinking and if they're responding at all inside. It might just be that, that cold look of late teens that I'm seeing. But I do hear from students from time to time, and they do tell me that it was a very meaningful class and they got a lot out of it. And that's all the reward I need, other than a regular paycheck. So then into the 2000s we go, and over the years, we got our first grant. I applied for a conservation C2000 grant that the Illinois Department of Natural Resources offered for a while. And I can't remember, I don't think I have any numbers with me, but I think we were awarded like $35,000, and it was to start major restoration of about 10 acres up around the fen and the remnant prairie outlined in that red box. And those two red lines represent permanent vegetation transects, each of them 50 meters long, where I collected some data to just document what was the current vegetation makeup just after buckthorn and hawthorn thickets had been cleared. And we had done some seeding and planting of native plant plugs. I have not been back there to resample that area. It would be a great research opportunity for others to do some follow-up work, to see how well the site has been restored, if it's recovered, has it changed any? Okay. Then in, 2010 or thereabouts, another master plan came along, and the college was rethinking of how to expand and improve the campus further. We'd had lots of growth. I think if you look back at that time period, there was anticipation that Will County was really going to grow out and develop. I think it was one of the fastest developing regions in the country before the 2008 financial meltdown kind of slowed that down for a while. But at that time, though, a certain administrator came along. And I always say, I've said this, that there are people that come along once in a lifetime, once in a career, that really make a difference. And I can certainly say that about David Gazy. Back in that time, about 2008, 2009, he was Vice President of Administrative Services. And for a short time, he also served as interim president. And it was at that time, in his leadership role, that he wanted to see JJC go green. He wanted to see the campus, the college, embrace sustainability. And at that time, I think it was Governor Quinn was promoting sustainability initiatives in the state. David Gazy invited me and a couple others to go down to Illinois State University to hear Governor Quinn talk about this initiative. And there was some real energy in the state to become greener and to embrace sustainability across the state. And David Gazy understood this and he got it. So when we came back, he had heard of the natural areas. He knew the work that we had been doing on it. And he asked me, well, what's it going to take, to get this job done? And I was always thinking small. I didn't think anything of it because an administrator had never asked a question like that. And one of my colleagues, Rich Rivera, said, hey, Andy, you got to tell him what you want done because I think you've got an ear for it right now. Oh, okay. Good idea, Rich. So David Gazy, probably Rich Rivera, people on the Natural Areas Committee, we took a hike on the Rock Run Bike Trail, and I explained at greater length what we could really use is a big infusion of cash to do the restoration work right. And so David Gazy worked capital improvement into the restoration of the natural areas. So we always have capital improvement, and it's usually to take care of roads, hard services, buildings. But Dave was going to also include the backyard of the campus, the natural areas. And with that, we now had and have had ever since 2010, a regular line item devoted to active management by an outside restoration contractor to continue the work of restoration. And that was the big moment, 2010 to 2012. Those other two red lines that you see here are two other permanent transects that I have out there where we're monitoring vegetation and to see how the plant community is responding to restoration techniques. Yeah, that was a great day. This is a shot of our fen in the growing season. Nice, pretty shot. And so over the years, we've had some outside funding. So $35,000 was a matching grant in 2007. So what's typically required of grants is that the institution has to provide something equivalent to the amount that the outside granting agency is offering. And so ID&R is offering $35,000. And so JJC offered in-kind services, which would include volunteers participating in restoration work. And that was counted like $10 an hour for every volunteer hour that was invested. I got a certain stipend for managing and overseeing the grant. And we also had the grounds crew involved. There was a video made, so video production, all of that was rolled into our match. And it was quite exciting. And then again, David Gazy, 2010, 2012, tens of thousands of dollars then and now budgeted for restoration and continued management. And then over the years, these are the contractors that we've had over the years. Most of these, I think, are still in existence, yeah, to varying degrees. Our current contractor is Pizzo. They have the current contract right now, but it's been a pretty seamless transition. About every third year, the contracts have to be renewed and we have to put out bids. And so local contractors will bid on the job, and if they want to continue, they bid, otherwise they don't. But they've all been doing, really good work, following a good restoration plan. It's been great. Another feature of our natural areas is the trail guides. These are self-guided trail guides that Zales first put together, again, promoting the educational utility of the natural areas. So these trail guides were handed out freely to anybody and everyone that wanted them. And they still exist in a certain version. The most recent version is the upper left corner one that I had helped put together. It almost was going to be discontinued as a hard copy, but I asked students of this generation, would they prefer a hard copy or a downloadable version, and more than 50% of the students said they'd like a hard copy because you may not get Wi-Fi service when you're out on the trails. So we have hard copies, and they go pretty quickly. And it's just a great way to continue to promote the natural areas in the community, that families, people from out of state that are visiting, they need a place to walk their dog. They'll find the mailbox that we keep them in, and they'll pick one up, and they can learn a little bit something about the natural areas. Another major project that we had going on that I was not nearly as involved with and invested in was our lake rehabilitation and management project. This was primarily headed up by Virginia Pekarsky, who did this voluntarily. She was our lab prep supervisor, and we kept her plenty busy doing lab prep work, but she was able to carve out time and monitor the lake quality and apply for a grant with the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. And we cleaned up our lake waters and the headwaters of our watershed. Could give a whole talk just about this. I'm not going to. If you want more information, we can certainly get it to you, but this really kind of highlights the general idea of the project. So let's see, by the numbers, we acquired a just under $200,000 grant from the Illinois EPA. We provided about $330,000 in matching funds and efforts to improve the water quality. So just over $500,000. And I write up there that this is the price of clean water and 40 years of neglect. And a little bit of history about the college lake there. Under that biofilter, no, wait a minute, up there, bioswale, up in the upper portion of that picture, that overlays a grassy waterway that runs from Holboat Road and a big sewer drain, street drain, that comes out from the subdivision to our very east. And this was before the Clean Water Act of 1970s. Remember, the college was built in 1968. So people were just dumping their water onto their neighbor's property. And that's basically what the developer did. And they were dumping stormwater through the ag fields into the fen area and then into the campus lake. All of our parking lots and rooftops drain directly into the campus lake. The campus lake is a retention pond, and it serves a function in that it holds and stores water and eventually lets the water out over a spillway, the dam at the far western edge of that picture. But all of that poor water management led to erosion and sedimentation and fertilizer runoff and car body fluids running off the parking lots, and all of that ends up in the lake. The lake fills in with cruddy sediments, and it just deteriorates over time, and it needed to be cleaned up, and we needed to demonstrate how to do that. And I think we served as a shining example to the community, how to better manage our waters. Way to go, JJC. And then coming to the present, years go by, things seem to be going along, and then there are outside forces that have other ideas. And in 2017, there is, or was and still is, a developer to the west of the college campus that had plans to put in a major development. Cullinan Properties and the Rock Run Crossings development right there on I-55 and I-80. And they approached the college leadership looking for a road right of way or access so that they could connect with Holboat Road and have another in and out to their property. The only thing is, their proposed road was going to go right through the college fen and natural areas. They were offering $2 million to the college. And being a community college that really watches its pennies, we could use money like that. And it was setting it up for possible confrontation. So we were going to board meetings, we were attending, we were speaking, following the rules that the board had established, making requests to speak. We had 2 minutes to say something in opposition to the road and the reasons why the resolution was passed. We brought out all the things that we've done in the past. We had really good community support, but we didn't know where the board members thought of the project. And I was certainly worried about what might happen to the fen and the natural areas. Well, it turned out the Board of Trustees didn't have to make any decision because the Illinois Department of Transportation, IDOT, had determined that that road that the developer had proposed was unnecessary. There were plenty of roads already in existence, and it certainly would be a big hassle and problem impacting a wetland that the fen is. And with those kind of headaches, turned out they weren't going to approve any new road. And so the fen was saved this time. So during that time, I was, leading more walks through the fens and natural areas. You can see it's pretty heavily overgrown along the edges there with probably honeysuckle. A lot of those areas have since been cleared out. Always being a promoter, we had a rededication of the Zales Trails, 20th anniversary since Zales had retired in 1999. And so another resolution was passed and Zales came out, gave a talk. It was a really nice event back then, May 2019, pre-COVID. There's Rich Rivera and Bill Zales. And our more permanent sign made of local dolomite limestone. And it's literally etched in stone, so it'll probably last a lot longer than the old wooden sign used to be. And this was just a throwback. This was the original dedication of the trails to Zales when he retired back in May of 1999. And we were unveiling the new wooden sign. And well, that deteriorated after so many years. Yeah, I remember that day fondly as well. And then we're close to finishing up here. Most recently, before I'm leaving, I put together this official restoration plan for the natural areas. So there is something written so that the college can refer to it, can continue to refer to a plan as we continue to manage and be good stewards to our natural areas. The plan follows the guidelines of the Society for Ecological Restoration. It's been vetted, and we had our local restoration contractor look it over, and he thought it was really good. All of our work here is merely advisory. We always have to remind ourselves that. Ultimately, all these decisions about the campus are made by the elected Board of Trustees, the 7 board members. So it's a constant reminder that we have to be sure to be involved in local politics, that we have to know who are running for these local elections and what the positions are of the people that run for these elected posts. So, was it worth it, all this work? I would say yes, it has been. Is it still worth it? I'd like to think that it is. And I hope that there's another generation of human beings, Illinoisans, JJC wolves that are willing to continue the important work of conservation. So I offer many thanks to all the people in my life, people that you would expect me to thank, my parents, my siblings, my former wife for bringing 3 wonderful children into the world, my friends, John, and others who are attending from out of state, colleagues, friends, the college for hiring me, giving me this opportunity to work here for 30 years. It's been really a wonderful opportunity. And thank you for attending.
Andy, thank you so much. Maybe the first to say thank you for your 30 years of service at the college. Your dedication and passion is amazing, and I definitely hope that students and faculty will follow in your footsteps. I just have to say, have you found the fountain of youth? Because you look fantastic, and maybe it's nature, but you don't look like someone who's about to be retired. And I mean that as like a huge compliment. Also, I loved seeing all of your material that I think would be awesome to have in the archives and scanned into our digital collection. So you know that right now that some of those flyers you shared were awesome, and I love seeing things before flip art. So that would be great to have some of that material if I could just scan it and make it. I want to just let everyone know, if you have questions, if you want to put those into the chat, I'm happy to kind of moderate and ask those. I was extremely relieved to hear that the fund sounds like it's okay, even though they are moving forward with that giant outdoor mall that they're talking about. They're concerned that that was going to be affected by that.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, the development's still going through, but that roadway is not. So for now, the area, I mean, we are isolated in a way, just because of the way the roadways were developed and established around here. And I know the college has always wanted to have a second entrance, a south entrance, a north entrance. They just want another entrance, and I'm just not convinced we really need it. So
there's a lot of just positive feedback coming in through the chats, just saying it's a wonderful hike. I know, kind of a virtual hike that we just went on, and just a lot of people just really count on you as far as everything you just presented. So thank you. I was going to ask your as far as your favorite in the nature area would be the Fen. Was that like your favorite place to spend time in nature trails, or do you have like a different favorite?
There, yeah, 124 acres with the established trails, and you can certainly walk off the trails. There are certainly more memorable locations just because of the natural features that are there. So I tend to stop and linger there with students and give them my spiel. That opening shot that I showed you at the very beginning of that savanna open woodland with this, you don't see any of the buildings, so it's kind of a more natural shot. I don't know, that there's just certain places that has a certain aesthetic that's really hard to put into words. It just catches the eye, and bur oaks and hickories are certainly characteristic of the landscape and favorite trees of mine. And it's, in the eye of the beholder. So I would suspect everyone kind of has their favorite place.
Mm-hmm. I have a question that came in. I noticed the JJC tagline, reach for the promise of tomorrow. What do you tell your students of 2022 the promise of tomorrow is?
Oh, that's so great that somebody saw that tagline on that letterhead, because I remember, we're always rebranding around here, and we just got to remove the old and put in something new. Doesn't matter if the old stuff's even good, we're just going to put something new in because it looks too old. And I've heard the rationale behind that. I'm not a marketer, so I respect the marketing. But I remember when they took that tagline off of our letterhead, and I was like, damn, why'd you do that? I mean, it was such a great tagline. So yeah, I mean, the whole mission of education is always, to educate the next generation and to help them to become engaged, to give them compelling reasons why they're pursuing. I try to get students to talk about the reasons why, and some are more willing than others to share. I think students, are looking for guidance. There's the pressure from their high schools that you got to go to college, you got to find a high paying job, and students will just pick something that pays real well, but it might not be where their passions lie or interest or aptitudes. And that can lead to a lot of big disappointments and failures, unfortunately. And I have to explain to the students that, it is perfectly normal to change majors, to fail classes, to drop classes, to change schools. I mean, I did it. They're going to probably encounter that, and just, not let it get them down and not let it hold them back for too long, so that they continue to pursue excellence and to make a future for themselves, whatever that might be. I kind of lost track of what the question was.
That's okay. I have some other questions that came in, and I don't know if you want me to just go ahead and move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, what can we do with the school election for the president this year in regards to sustainability and preservation?
I have a feeling I know who that came from, which is great. Good. Keep it out there. I totally agree. If not us, who's going to do it? And, COVID has really put a dent on a lot of things. Paying attention, being close to the action. We're disconnected from the college. We're disconnected from community. And so we're not paying as close attention to the changes that are still in the works everywhere. So, the college leadership is really important. And yeah, we should be asking our leadership what their thoughts and opinions are about the concept of sustainability, making sure that resources last indefinitely so that future generations have a similar kind of quality of life, that we're quickly, scraping and degrading and deteriorating, and we should know better, for goodness sakes. And, we get commitments to varying degrees and competing interests. I don't know how you get around the competing interests that have existed all along. And it's like, how do we make this interest more of the priority than all the other priorities we have? And I think it's just constantly banging the drum and constantly promoting it. I don't know if I was the most effective promoter. I think I became an irritant to some and many. I don't know. They don't tell you personally, but so maybe there's better ways, more effective ways to persuade and, to encourage us to look for leadership that promotes sustainability. And like I said, once in a career, an administrator comes along, and for me, it was David Gazy. And that's not to take away from the other administrators that we've had. It's just that he was in that leadership role. He saw his moment and he took it. Thank goodness. So we're a LEED certified campus in various ways.
So we're down to just a few minutes. We have a question here that I think would be a nice one to end on. What was the moment in your JJC career?
Say that one more time.
What was your favorite moment in your JJC career?
My favorite moment? Students ask this often of me, what's my favorite this and that? And I tell them, I don't have one of my favorite. So I never have the favorite. It's always one of the favorites. Besides the obvious things that I probably already talked about, it was seeing my own children on campus taking classes, sitting in the classrooms and taking classes with my colleagues, and seeing them in that position. And then, moving on, they grew up. They grew up here with me working here, and then they've attended, and it's gone full circle. Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Andy, Professor Neill, for being here. Thank all of our attendees. I certainly have learned so much, and this was an excellent program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks.
See you all around.
Bye, everyone.